Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the broadcast. We're going to get right to a breaking news story, and we have handled a number of these over the years, and we mentioned the situation with the pastors in Sudan. We've got another breaking news story, and this is Pastor Andrew Brunson. He is an American pastor. He's been ministering for over 23 years in Turkey without any issues. He has now been picked up on charges and has been jailed, charged with membership in an armed terrorist organization, which, as Jordan will say in a moment, is basically just a cover. Turkey, of course, has become an Islamist regime. He ran a church as a pastor. As I said, he's ministered there for 23 years. He's a U.S. citizen from Black Mountain, North Carolina. We are now representing him and his family. We've got international diplomacy on the ground, but this is a Christian pastor that is basically, Jordan, these are, as always with these situations, trumped up charges. It's usually national security. They're a little bit more specific here. What's your sense?
Well, since the coup in Turkey and the attempted coup in Turkey, you've seen the government crack down even more, bringing charges like this against various citizens. The difference in this situation was that initially the pastor was scheduled to be deported. And he was going to be sent out of the country with his wife, just deported out after 23 years serving people in Turkey. Now, once that changed, though, his wife was let out and was going to be go through the normal process. That changed. He then was held in a deportation facility for 2 months. Right. So not in a prison with no criminal charges against him, just deported. His visa wasn't renewed. Time for you to go. This was pretty common after that failed coup attempt in Turkey, as Erdogan has increased his pressure on everyone, including foreigners. But then, just a few days ago, on December 8th, he was taken into a prison and charged with, in a terrorism-specific prison, and charged with terror crimes, crimes against the country's national security, charges of being part of an armed terrorist group. So these would be serious charges. This is at a time where Turkey is discussing even bringing back the death penalty. Yeah, lawyers are not allowed access to his files. That's going on right now. We've got multiple diplomatic efforts going on right now on this front. But again, if you're just joining us, here we are about to celebrate Christmas, and I don't want to ignore the plight of those who've stood up for their faith. Our Oxford Center for the Study of Law and Public Policy has done extensive research on Turkey. Turkey's become an Islamist country again. It's not the Turkey of Ataturk. We are on the ground, both diplomatically and legally. We're taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. We also have notified the president-elect, Donald Trump, who I think will take a firm stand on this, is my suspicion. And also, we've already been working on Capitol Hill for the last week. We didn't go public with this until today because we were hoping that he would be released. He was not. Our public campaign has now started.
Yeah, we've notified Capitol Hill on a widespread level, Jay. Several senators have already taken action. I would specifically mention Chairman Corker, Senator Langford, and then also Congressman Pittenger, who represents the Brunson family in that North Carolina district. But, Jay, I would just quickly say this. We have seen this before, and we know how to resolve these. The way to resolve these is widespread attention and focus on the matter. That bubbles up through governments. That's what will bring him home.
Yeah, we just got an interesting comment, Logan, from Facebook. Somebody that lives near from the pastor's family area.
Yeah, this is Penny on Facebook. Said, praying for the pastor. He's from close by where I live. And a lot of comments like that are coming in, praying. Turkey has now become hardcore Islamic rule. Yeah, Christians are in danger. So these are the kind of comments that are coming in. Well, we represent the Ecumenical Patriarch, which is the Orthodox Church there. They're having a difficult time. This is an evangelical, EPC, Evangelical Presbyterian Church. Well, there's a lot to talk about on this case, and we need your help. As all of these cases, you know this, international outcry is critical as we're working in Washington at the UN as well. We need to let Turkey know, a NATO ally, that you're standing with Pastor Brunson. We need to let our officials know. Go to aclj.org, sign that petition right now, or you can also call us at 1-877-989-2255. Either way, you could have your voice heard, and we want to get as many signatures on this petition. American pastor, 23 years in
Turkey without any difficulty, is now in jail, charged with crimes against the state. It's absurd. It's happened before. We've had success on these cases in the past. We need your help. ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org, or 1-877-989-2255.
It is a troubling development for an American pastor. Pastor Andrew Brunson, a U.S. citizen from North Carolina, has been working and living in Turkey for more than 2 decades. Now he is in a Turkish prison. His imprisonment came as a complete surprise to him and his family. He's been falsely charged with, quote, membership in an armed terrorist organization. The charging documents state, quote, no evidence has been gathered against him. Now the American Center for Law and Justice is representing the family, working to put the spotlight on Pastor Andrew. Pastor Andrew must be freed immediately. That's exactly why the ACLJ has launched an international campaign calling for his release. We're mobilizing our international resources, including our offices in the region, demanding Pastor Andrew's freedom. Take action with us right now before it's too late. You can add your name to our petition online. Sign the petition to free American Pastor Andrew Brunson. Add your name online at aclj.org.
All right, here's what we've got. An American pastor. His name is Andrew Brunson. He is 48 years old. He's been falsely charged with membership in an armed terrorist organization in Turkey. He's an imprisoned pastor now. There's no evidence, by the way, they say that in the papers, that he's violated any Turkish laws. He's been in Turkey ministering as an evangelical Presbyterian church pastor for 23 years. We're representing the family. The pastor is now facing grave danger in the Turkish prison where he's being held. As Jordan mentioned during the break, he's being held because he's a Christian, and that's what this is all about. But here's what you've got to understand is he was being held for deportation proceedings, and a deportation would have been fine. The difficulty now is he's been transferred to a regular prison, and this is a NATO ally. And Jordan was talking about the NATO aspect of this during the break. I think it's important to share this with our full-on radio audience, too.
Yeah, so this is not, again, this is not Iran. This is not Sudan. These are not countries that are part of an axis of evil or state sponsors of terror. I mean, Turkey's had problems. It's a kind of an authoritarian regime, but this is not even like Russia.
Right.
This is a country that's part of the NATO alliance that has, at times in its history, has wanted to become more European, and at other times has kind of moved more Eastern. And now I think it's in a time period where it's a authoritarian regime in Erdogan, who is the leader of Turkey, somewhat more Islamic. Certainly he is. His wife wears a veil, which is actually controversial in Turkey. But it's still a very cosmopolitan country. Spent time in Istanbul. Now there was an attempted coup. So things went from kind of like how it is in Putin in Russia to much more dangerous for anyone who the government recognizes as may not be quite in line with them. Now in the pastor's case, as he said in his statements, he has no idea why he's had these charges against him. He's been there for 23 years with no problems with the government, including the Erdogan government, through the coup, doing this all openly and publicly, nothing hidden here. Had his visa, but was legally in the country.
Yeah, legal status.
Kids were raised there.
Right.
And yet he's still facing this very serious issue.
Could be a death penalty charge.
And so, I mean, Turkey is debating to bring back the death penalty because of these very arrests. This is happening to a lot of Turkish people.
Yeah,
but he's now been caught up in this. As an American, honestly, he should be treated differently because the U.S. government, as the leader really in NATO, should be able to pick up the phone and say, send him home. He is not some major figure that should be which the
Obama administration has not done.
No.
And Than, let's talk about that, because this is where they've not been good. And this is, we've already got context into the incoming Trump administration, which I think will be much tougher on this stuff. But let's talk about, you've talked about what we've got going on Capitol Hill, but there's another aspect of this, not only what's going on Capitol Hill, but what can go on within the incoming administration on this, especially since Donald Trump, during the election, raised issues on the NATO alliances.
Well, yeah, and it underscores what Jordan was just saying. The United States government, Jay, has to speak with one voice. This is a U.S. citizen. We have to stand up for our own. And we have seen this in other situations, Jay. But with it being a NATO ally, it will be more important than ever that the State Department, the United States Congress, And then maybe most importantly, the incoming administration stands up and speaks with one voice and doesn't accept anything less than a prompt return. Again, this is not Iran, this is Turkey, and this is not a Turkish citizen, this is a United States citizen.
And as I mentioned, our Oxford Center for the Study of Law and Public Policy, which is our policy arm of the ACLJ, has been worked extensively on the issues with Turkey. We have experts on the situation with Turkey. We represent the Ecumenical Patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church. They're having tremendous problems there as well. But this is a different situation where American pastor Andrew Brunson, now imprisoned. He's an American, folks, born in North Carolina, an American citizen, in a Turkish prison, NATO ally. Let's go ahead and take some calls.
All right, let's go to Jeff in Chelsea, Massachusetts. You're on the air.
Hi, Jeff. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Great show. Here's my question. Can you see this occurring in America, especially if the people are dumb enough to vote in another Democrat?
No, I don't. Look, this is the difference between the United States and every place else in the world. We've got real checks and balances. The president's powers are checked. The judiciary is a check. The point you're bringing up is we've got an independent judiciary in the United States, Jeff. The problem is in Turkey, especially after the coup, Jordan, there is no independent judiciary anymore. There's an appeal Friday, but let me tell you, could a miracle happen? Yes, but realistically, no.
Most of the judges have been arrested and
thrown out.
They've also been they've
jail.
Lost their jobs. They're also in jail, facing these kind of charges as part of the attempted coup, which people have questioned whether or not it was even real, whether it was a stunt by this authoritarian government, the Erdogan government in Turkey, to have a justification for mass arrests and mass incarcerations. And it appears that in this situation, in Izmir, Turkey, which is on the Mediterranean side, it's that he would have been caught up in obviously this movement, or else it would have probably been maybe local officials said, we don't want this church anymore, we're Muslims, and let's get rid of this guy, and they can deport him. And that would have been not right. You could even say that was something you could probably legally fight, but they've upped the ante by moving him from a detention facility for immigration, which we have in the United States. If you're here illegally or you need to be deported and you've been judged to be deported, you would be in those detention facilities until your deportation could be arranged. But he was already there way too long. That was 60 days. Usually you're there for a few days. So and then and then you're gone.
Right. That's why we didn't go public, by the way, because what we thought was he was in a deportation proceeding. The deportation order had been issued. They'll deport him. That would be a victory, get him out. But that's not what's happened.
No, that didn't happen. And now he's in a situation where he's in a real prison facing terror charges. And this has all happened since Friday. So we're talking just a few days where the family has made this decision that they feel like the world needs to know about this story.
All right, we do want you to sign the petition at aclj.org. You're going to get an email about it this afternoon on the Be Heard Project. That's our project dealing with the persecuted church. Also, you'll be getting emails tomorrow and Friday from the ACLJ. Sign those. The appeal is Friday within Turkey. We want to let our Turkish lawyers there know what the status is, how many people have signed on. And we're also, there's a piece up at foxnews.com. I want to thank our friends at Fox News for, again, jumping right in to cover this. That's a big deal. And the fact that they did that, and it's on the front page of the Fox News website right now. Let's take some calls or comments at 1-800-684-3110. We want to hear what you have to think about this. What do you think about the fact that Turkey's a NATO ally and did this? Is that a sign of weakness?
Paul's got a comment related to that. Let's go to Paul in L.A. on line 3.
Hey, Paul.
Louisiana.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. Real quick on the NATO thing, it kind of highlights something that we need to really talk about, have a discussion about these pacts we've made with these countries, and as they change. How do we, I know Trump brought it up during the election and took a lot of heat for it. I mean,
he was right.
Got an issue with, he was right. And we got an issue with Taiwan that we're fixing to have to deal with that's going to be off the
but
charts.
I mean, the one with Turkey, Turkey is a NATO ally. They've almost called on our assistance multiple times, and they've gone the way of being more of an Islamic regime. They are certainly moving more in that direction. And there is this sense that Turkey is a false ally. And we've got this at the same time that we've got an American now. I mean, this makes the body politic. The real politic is now world politic. And the real politic we're seeing. So when Donald Trump came up during the campaign about NATO and Turkey, folks, now we're dealing with that right here on a case. So we've got a case involving Turkey and NATO ally and a pastor being held because he's a Christian in a jail in Turkey, and they're a NATO ally. Than?
Well, on all these alliances, Jay, getting an ally to abide by the terms of the agreement requires leadership. That has been something that has been lacking at the United States, and I would certainly echo your thoughts on NATO, but I would throw another one in. at the United Nations. This is a clear violation of the ICCPR. Turkey is in violation. Guess what would enforce that agreement? U.S. leadership. And I would call on the next administration to do a much better job than the outgoing administration to administer that, and I do believe it will take place.
All right, folks, here's what we've got. The political reality of this is we can't have this go on for 3 years. This has got to be moving quickly. We've got an incoming administration that's taking a much more harder line, including with allies that aren't acting like allies.
Yeah, that's right. And so you would think that this is one of those timing situations where if you are Turkey, and now this has probably gotten to the attention of your national leaders. These always start at the local level.
Right.
So here it's not Ankara, it's not Istanbul. This is
province.
And it's not the national government. This is, again, these are local governments. But now with the terror charges, that would be like a federal issue. That's no longer just a petty crime issue or a deportation matter. So you've now got to get the attention of the Turkish government. And the U.S., you would think that if you're Turkey, you'd much rather deal with the Obama administration on this and just get this handled than the incoming Trump administration with people like Mad Dog Mattis and the CEO of Exxon.
Yeah, they're not going to take this stuff easily.
No, they're not, and they know how to. So I think that you would imagine that they would want to resolve this sooner rather than later. Now, that being said, we know that this State Department is basically shutting down. And that is an issue as well.
And also
they've always been weak on these issues.
And they have never recognized Turkey as the serious threat that it is. President Obama is still under this false illusion that Turkey is a real ally and that it's a progressive democratic country, and that's just false.
Yes, that it's a decent place, if you will.
It's the model. They think it was the model for the Muslim world.
And the thing is, if it was for a period of time,
not now.
And it's been slowly changing. Like Russia in the fall of the Soviet Union, where things would get a little. It's kind of moved towards where you've got a authoritarian leader who lives in a big new palace.
Yep.
And it is much more Islamic, and is used kind of political Islam to take a more hardline stance in a country.
And the coup may or may not have been real.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another question. More on Pastor Brunson's case when we come back. More of your calls and comments. But again, sign that petition at aclj.org for Pastor Brunson's release. 48 years old. In there, 23 years he's been ministering his adult life in Turkey. He's had a great ministry. And now this, in prison because he's a Christian. aclj.org to sign that petition, or 1-877-989-2255. It's 1-877-989-2255 or aclj.org.
It is a troubling development for an American pastor. Pastor Andrew Brunson, a U.S. citizen from North Carolina, has been working and living in Turkey for more than 2 decades. Now he is in a Turkish prison. His imprisonment came as a complete surprise to him and his family. He's been falsely charged with, quote, membership in an armed terrorist organization. The charging documents state, quote, no evidence has been gathered against him. Now the American Center for Law and Justice is representing the family, working to put the spotlight on Pastor Andrew. Pastor Andrew must be freed immediately. That's exactly why the ACLJ has launched an international campaign calling for his release. We're mobilizing our international resources, including our offices in the region, demanding Pastor Andrew's freedom. Take action with us right now before it's too late. You can add your name to our petition online. Sign the petition to free American Pastor Andrew Brunson. Add your name online at aclj.org.
All right, of course, the American Center for Law and Justice has been involved actively in defending persecuted religious minorities, Christians around the globe. We're announcing today, we've been working on this case for a couple of weeks, that we're representing the family of American pastor Andrew Brunson, a U.S. citizen from Black Mountain, North Carolina. He's imprisoned in Turkey because of his Christian faith. They've alleged that he's a member of an armed terrorist organization. Turkey is a supposed NATO ally, and I say supposed because the fact of the matter is that they have not acted like an ally in a long time. We are building global support for his case at aclj.org. We encourage you to go there. There's a piece up on this case at foxnews.com. There's a news story up on that. So there'll be more information there. We are taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. It does bring up the issue that Donald Trump talked about, which is when NATO allies don't act like allies. And that's, before we get to the callers, Logan, in the comments, Jordan, the fact is this is a NATO ally that does not act like a NATO ally. Trump got a lot of pressure and pushback on that, but we're watching it right now in a real case, folks. He was right.
Yes, I mean, so you've got a situation where an ally is not acting like an ally. And it's not to say that to be a member of NATO, you have to be in line on every issue, but it would be hard to imagine this happening with the other members of NATO and any of those countries on a situation involving because of someone's faith. And if there was a disagreement over a citizen specifically, and you've got those agreements as well. There's nothing here in charges. This is a region of the world where you could, if someone was involved in charges like this, it'd be pretty easy to bring them. But in this case, they don't have any kind of information.
Let's go to Michael calling from Slow, California. You're on the air.
Hi, Michael.
Good day to you. I was thinking that it would be an advantage to flood the Turkish embassy with phone calls concerning this, as well as the petition.
All right, so let me tell you the order in which we're doing it, and I'll get Dan to comment on this. We are starting the petition campaign actually today. There have been high discussions within the Turkish embassy by senators, United States senators, and others. But, Dan, as far as calls into the Turkish embassy, are we ready for that yet, or should we hold off and get this petition? I don't think flooding the Turkish embassy right now is probably our best bet.
First step is to sign this petition, Jay. We have been in contact with the embassies both here in Washington, D.C. and in Ankara, so those contacts have been made. There may be a point where we will deploy the individual calls, but for now, you need to be aware of the case. You need to read the facts. You need to make your members aware of it, and we will start that initial outreach for you.
Yeah, it's Turkey's now. It's kind of the ball will be in their court, their leadership as well, because now it's gone so public. And that you will see how the government responds. Do they want this resolved? Do they try to make this a bigger issue? Unfortunately, the Obama administration, you could say, has set an unfortunate precedent that you can get something out of these kind of releases. So like Iran. But this is not a country, again, that should be treated like Iran or Russia or China, for that matter, or North Korea. This is a NATO
ally.
It's one of our allies. It's a U.S.
North
ally.
Atlantic Treaty Organization ally. Now, here's what Donald Trump, who raised concern about this and got pushback, but this is what he said. He was right. Here it is.
When you look at NATO, I was asked on a major show, what do you think of NATO? And you have to understand, I'm a business person. I did really well, but I have common sense. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I haven't given lots of thought to NATO, but two things. Number one, the 28 countries of NATO, many of them aren't paying their fair share. Number two, and that bothers me because we should be, we're defending them, and they should at least be paying us what they're supposed to be paying by treaty and contract.
We're paying money to NATO countries to provide aid, including to Turkey, because they've had troubles with Russia on their borders and other countries and Syria. And we have an American pastor being held now there in prison. That is not the way this is supposed to work under NATO.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and he's been 23 years in the country. Yeah, so this is not so a rebel rouser, not someone who was flying under the radar. He's not a Turkish national. Again, he's an American citizen. So you could say missionary, but in a sense, he spent so many years there. I don't even think it would be considered that. I think he's a local pastor.
Yeah.
But he's an American, and his kids were raised there, and has had no issues with the government before in the past. Gets caught up in a deportation issue. Family was upset about that, but then gets moved out of a regular kind of holding facility where the conditions were okay for Turkish standards, now into a prison. Now, I want to explain to you the problems with that. In Turkey right now, if you're being charged with terror-related charges, you are in prison with people who are from ISIS.
Yeah.
So Turkey is dealing with real terror threats. It is absurd that an American, a pastor, has been caught up in the way that they are treating this, which is not the way the U.S. would ever treat a terror threat, or probably other NATO allies, but this is it is an authoritarian government bordering on dictatorship. I don't know if you go that far, because there still are close. Technically elections there, but he's done the same kind of moves like Putin, where he's changed the constitution around for leadership.
More powers.
Right. Well, more powers, and he's able to continue to hold these positions of power. And you've seen mass arrest of plenty of Turkish people who probably shouldn't have been arrested. But in this case, it's an American. It's not someone from Turkey who's involved in politics.
And like Jordan said, we're not talking about Iran. We're not talking about, even Saudi Arabia, although they're an ally. We're talking about a NATO ally. This is part of a North Atlantic Treaty Organization country, for goodness sake. All right, let's take a phone call. Who do we have next?
Let's go to MG on line 1 in California.
Hi, MG. You're on the air.
Well, I spent 2 summers in Turkey, and we were there officially to teach English.
Yep.
Because we could not go there to work as missionaries.
Right.
But we worked with a Christian church, a legal Christian church in the town of Antalya. It's kind of a challenge over there, and our dear friend Ramazan Arkan, who is the pastor, the Turkish pastor, who's Presbyterian, and Jim Baltima, the American pastor who was there, saw some horrible things.
Yeah.
Ramazan was trying to put together a Christmas service, and the government authorized it. It was a legal gathering in the square, and the police contacted Ramazan and said, you're fine doing this, but we're really worried someone's going to try to take you out. And then sure enough, moments before he was to take the stage, they got a guy with weapons.
Yeah.
But
this is happening, by the way, in Turkey often now. Jordan was there, was it 3 years ago?
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
It has changed radically, and we only got a minute left here. Radically in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, to me, we have an office in Russia, and so I was kind of comparing it to that kind of feel. Now, Turkey was, when I was there, this was when they were beginning this influx in Istanbul of all the migrants, people, refugees. So there were people in the streets everywhere, and you could see that they did have a real threat with that, like we do here, on a much larger scale. We're talking millions of refugees from Syria and Iraq, who some could have been, they have had terror attacks. So they have threats, but it feels like when you're there now, which I think is very different than how it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, feels very similar in Istanbul to Moscow. It's cosmopolitan, it's Western-ish, with an Eastern tilt, obviously like Russia, like Moscow, very pro-business. At the same time, there's the square, don't go protest. So it's keep quiet. You can go about your day, and you don't have to,
But
worry.
for this pastor who kept quiet, he ends up in jail. We're helping to get him out and still thrown in jail. Well, folks, this is the first TV broadcast we've done on this case, and we were not going public on this as we were working diplomatic efforts when Pastor Brunson was actually being held in a deportation facility where he was going to be deported. That's now a much different case since he's been transferred from the deportation issue to now a criminal charge. He has done nothing except running and pastoring his church. And now he's in the criminal proceedings. He's in the jail, by the way, with ISIS members. They put him in the same jail. So this is an American. Turkey's a NATO ally. For those of you that want to stand with Pastor Brunson, I encourage everybody that's watching this broadcast right now on television to do this. Go to aclj.org and sign that petition now, or call us at 1-877-989-2255. It's aclj.org. That's aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255. We'll talk to you next week.
It is a troubling development for an American pastor. Pastor Andrew Brunson, a U.S. citizen from North Carolina, has been working and living in Turkey for more than 2 decades. Now he is in a Turkish prison. His imprisonment came as a complete surprise to him and his family. He's been falsely charged with, quote, membership in an armed terrorist organization. The charging documents state, quote, no evidence has been gathered against him. Now the American Center for Law and Justice is representing the family, working to put the spotlight on Pastor Andrew. Pastor Andrew must be freed immediately. That's exactly why the ACLJ has launched an international campaign calling for his release. We're mobilizing our international resources, including our offices in the region, demanding Pastor Andrew's freedom. Take action with us right now before it's too late. You can add your name to our petition online. Sign the petition to free American Pastor Andrew Brunson. Add your name online at aclj.org.